The warning lights on the console flashed red, and Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez gripped her seat as the scout ship shook violently, and sparks flew from the control panel, and she had been on routine patrol near the edge of human space when something went terribly wrong, and the navigation system showed readings that made no sense and coordinates that should not exist. And then the portal opened. It appeared directly in front of her ship in swirling colors that hurt to look at and pulling her forward with irresistible force, and Maya hit every button she could reach and tried to reverse thrust and tried to send a distress signal, but nothing worked, and the portal swallowed her ship whole and everything went white. When her vision cleared, she was falling and the ship was gone and she was just falling through empty air, and her training kicked in and she tucked and rolled and prepared for impact, and the ground rushed up to meet her, and it was purple and crystalline and singing Maya, hit hard. But the strange ground absorbed some of the impact and she rolled to her feet and breathing hard and checking herself for injuries, and nothing broken and just some bruises, and she looked around and tried to understand where she was. The sky was wrong and 2 suns hung overhead, and 1 silver and 1 gold, and they cast strange shadows, and the air tasted sweet and thick and made her head feel light, and the ground beneath her feet hummed with energy, and crystals grew from it like trees, and they chimed softly in a wind she could barely feel. She reached for her communicator, but it was dead, and reached for her weapon and found her sidearm still holstered. And at least she had that, and she started walking because standing still would not help, and she needed to find shelter and water and a way home. The crystalline forest stretched endlessly, and the trees were not really trees but towers of living crystal, and they refracted light into rainbow patterns, and Maya walked carefully, and her boots crunching on the singing ground, and every sound seemed amplified, and she felt watched. Then she heard it, and a sound like thunder and like music, and like the world itself breathing, and she looked up and her heart stopped. 3 dragons flew overhead, and their wings blocked out the suns and cast shadows that moved like living things, and they were massive and beautiful and terrifying, and their scales shimmered with colors that had no names, and Maya had seen pictures and had heard stories, but nothing prepared her for the reality of dragons. They circled lower, and their movements graceful despite their size, and Maya stood frozen and watching them and wondering if she should run, and knowing it would not matter if she did, and these creatures could catch her in seconds, and so she stood her ground, and humans did not run. The largest dragon was midnight blue, and its scales so dark they seemed to absorb light, and its eyes burned gold and ancient, and it landed first, and the ground shaking and crystals singing in distress, and the other 2 dragons landed beside it, and 1 silver and 1 emerald green, and all 3 watched Maya with intelligence that was clearly not animal. Maya raised her hands slowly and palms out, and hoping the gesture meant the same thing here as it did in human space, and her mouth was dry, and her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. And I mean no harm, and I am lost, and I need help. The dragons did not move and did not attack, and just watched her, and then something moved between them and a figure walking forward, and Maya saw her and forgot how to breathe. She was elf, and there was no other word for it, and tall and slender and graceful in ways humans could never be, and her hair was pure silver and fell past her waist and moved in wind that was not there, and her skin seemed to glow softly, and her eyes were the deep purple of space itself, and held stars within them. She wore armor that looked grown rather than made, in flowing lines and organic curves, and it covered her completely, and yet somehow emphasized her otherworldly beauty. And her hand rested casually on the neck of the midnight blue dragon, and like the creature was a pet and not a force of nature. The elf woman studied Maya with curiosity and caution, and her head tilting slightly, and then she spoke, and her voice had music in it, and also power. And I am Lyra of the Starborn Court, and you stand uninvited in the realm of Queen Celestia, and these are my companions, and she gestured to the dragons in Sable and Moonwhisper and Emerald, and they are not pleased by your intrusion. Maya swallowed hard and trying to process everything, and elves and dragons and realms and queens, and this was far beyond first contact protocols. And I am Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez of Earth and of the human space fleet, and my ship malfunctioned, and a portal opened, and I fell through, and I did not mean to intrude, and I just want to go home. Lyra eyes narrowed slightly, and Earth, and I have not heard of this place, and human, and her gaze swept over Maya, and taking in her uniform and her weapon and her very human features, and you are far from anywhere I know, and the portals do not open randomly, and something brought you here. The midnight blue dragon and sable and lowered its massive head and sniffing at Maya. And its breath was hot and smelled of starfire and ozone, and it rumbled deep in its chest, and the sound vibrating through Maya, bones and making her teeth ache. Sable says you smell of courage, and Lyra translated, and a slight smile touching her lips, and also fear, and that is good because only fools feel no fear. And she paused in studying Maya more intently, and my mother will want to meet you human, and Queen Celestia does not take kindly to uninvited guests, but perhaps she will be merciful. Maya felt cold despite the warm air, and how merciful Lyra's expression was unreadable, and that depends entirely on you, and come and we will take you to the palace, and do not try to run and do not try to fight, and both would be pointless. And also Fatal Maya nodded, and understanding she had no choice. And also understanding that Lyra was trying to help her in her own way, and the warning was a kindness, and I understand, and I will cooperate. Good, and Lyra turned and walking back toward Sable, and the great dragon lowered itself to the ground, and Lyra climbed onto its back with practiced ease, and then looked down at Maya and are you coming? Maya stared, and you want me to ride? The dragon Lyra smiled, and it transformed her face and made her even more beautiful. And unless you prefer to walk, and it is 3 days' journey on foot, and Sable has agreed to carry you and consider it an honor, and dragons do not offer rides to just anyone. Maya approached carefully, and her hand shaking slightly as she reached out, and Sable hide was warm and smooth and hummed with power under her touch, and she climbed up behind Lyra and gripping tightly and trying not to think about how high they would fly hold on human. And Lyra advised and try not to scream, and it upset Sable. Before Maya could ask what she meant, the dragon launched itself into the air, and the world dropped away, and Maya bit back a yell, and the wind roared in her ears, and the ground became distant, and the crystalline forest became a carpet of rainbows below them. And despite her fear, and despite her situation, and Maya felt a wild joy surged through her, and she was flying on a dragon, and this was impossible, and this was amazing. Lyra laughed, and the sound carried back on the wind, and you are braver than I expected, human, and most people scream, and she glanced back, and her star-filled eyes meeting Maya, and perhaps you will survive my mother after all. Maya managed a shaky smile, and I hope so, and because I really want to see what happens next. The palace appeared on the horizon, and floating among clouds, and impossible, and beautiful, and Maya's heart sank, and because she knew that whatever awaited her there would change everything, and there was no going back now. The palace grew larger as they flew closer, and Maya could see it was not built on anything solid, and it simply floated in the air, and held aloft by magic or technology she could not understand, and towers spiraled upward, and catching the light of both suns and walls, seemed made of pearl and crystal, and something that looked like frozen moonlight, and gardens grew on terraces that should not exist, and waterfalls flowed upward. Instead of down, Sable circled the palace twice, and the other, 2 dragons following, and then descended toward a landing platform that jutted from the main tower, and the dragon landed with surprising gentleness, and folding its massive wings and lowering itself, so Lyra and Maya could dismount. Maya slid off, carefully, and her legs shaking from the flight and from fear of what came next, and the platform was smooth white stone and warm under her feet. And she looked around and trying to memorize everything and trying to understand this impossible place. Guards waited at the entrance, and they were elves too, and tall and beautiful and dangerous looking, and they wore armor similar to Lyra, and carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their eyes tracked Maya with suspicion and calculation. And she was clearly not welcome here. Lyra spoke to them in a language Maya did not understand, and musical and flowing and full of sounds human throats could not make, and the guards replied, and their voices sharp and questioning, and Lyra gestured to Maya and spoke again, in her tone firm, and the guard stepped aside and reluctantly this way. And Lyra said, and leading Maya through corridors that seemed carved from single pieces of crystal, and lights floated overhead with no visible source, and the air smelled of flowers Maya had no names for, and everything was beautiful and alien and overwhelming. Other elves passed them, and stopping to stare at Maya, and whispering among themselves, and their expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust to fear. And Maya kept her head up and her shoulders back and tried to look confident, even though her heart hammered. And humans did not show fear, even when they felt it. Lyra noticed and glanced back. And you walk well for someone about to meet the most powerful being in this realm. Maya managed a small smile, and I was trained not to show weakness, and it is a survival thing. Lyra's expression softened slightly, and that is wise. And my mother respects strength, but do not mistake respect for mercy, and she is protective of her people and especially of me. And she paused at a massive door covered in silver runes, and be careful, human, and be honest, and do not stare at me too long. Maya blinked, and what? The doors opened before Lyra could explain, and they entered a throne room that took Maya's breath away, and the ceiling soared impossibly high and showed the sky beyond, or maybe showed other skies and other worlds, and the walls were lined with more guards and with courtiers in elaborate dress, and at the far end on a throne of living light and sat Queen Celestia. She was taller than Lyra, and her presence filled the room and made the air heavy, and her crown was not metal, but pure radiance and light that shifted and changed, and her robe seemed woven from starlight, and her eyes were the color of deep space and held galaxies within them. And Maya understood immediately that this being could unmake her with a thought. Lyra knelt and bowing her head, and Maya followed her example, and hoping it was the right thing to do. Rise, and the queen voice was like music and like thunder and like the sound the universe made when it was born and present. This intruder Lyra stood and gestured to Maya, and this is Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, of Earth and of a place called the Human Space Fleet, and she came through a portal and claims it was an accident, and I have brought her to you for judgment. The queen gaze fixed on Maya, and the weight of it was crushing, and Maya forced herself to meet those impossible eyes and to stand straight and to not look away, even though every instinct screamed at her to kneel and to beg for mercy. You are human, and the queen stated, and I have heard of your kind, and young, and brash, and spreading through the stars like wildfire, and you destroy more than you create. And you wage war, and you do not understand the old ways, and what are you doing? In my realm, Maya took a breath, and your majesty and I am here by accident, and my ship malfunctioned, and a portal opened and I fell through, and I mean no harm to you or your people, and I just want to go home. The queen expression did not change, and mortals do not simply fall through portals, and the fabric between worlds is strong, and something powerful had to tear it open, and why would such power be used for one small human? I do not know, and Maya admitted. And I am just a scout and a lieutenant and nobody important. And I was on routine patrol, and then everything went wrong, and I am sorry for intruding. The queen leaned forward slightly, and her eyes narrowing, and you speak truth, and I can taste it in your words, but there is something else. And you look at my daughter with thoughts that are not appropriate, and I can see into your mind, human, and I see what you imagine. Maya felt her face flush, and she glanced at Lyra, and who had gone very still, and back at the queen and your majesty and I. And she took a breath and decided honesty was her only option, and I was admiring her beauty, and that is true, but I meant no disrespect, and humans appreciate beauty when we see it, and it is our nature. The throne room went silent, and the courtiers gasped, and the guards' hands moved to their weapons, and Lyra's eyes went wide, and the queen expression shifted from neutral to cold fury. You dare and power crackled around the queen, and the lights dimmed, and the air itself seemed to freeze. And you dare to look upon my daughter with lust and with desire, and you imagine her without her armor, and you picture yourself touching her, and you dare. Maya's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. And your majesty and I looked at someone beautiful, and I appreciated that beauty. And that is all. And I did not act on any thought, and I did not speak anything inappropriate, and thinking is not a crime, and even here. The queen rose from her throne, and the movement fluid and terrible, and for any other being perhaps not. But you are in my realm, and under my law, and no one looks at my daughter with such thoughts and lives to speak of it. And I should unmake you now and scatter your atoms across the void. Lyra stepped forward. And mother, please. And she did nothing wrong, and humans are different, and they silence. And the queen voice cracked like lightning, and you defend this creature and this mortal who imagines you in ways that are shameful. Maya felt anger spark through her fear, and that is not fair. and I thought someone was beautiful, and that is natural, and that is normal, and you cannot punish thoughts, and only actions matter. The queen raised her hand, and starfire gathered around her fingers, and brilliant and deadly and insolent human, and you will learn respect, and you will learn what happens when you. And then Maya did something that surprised everyone, including herself, and she was going to die anyway, and might as well die being herself. And she looked directly at Queen Celestia, and she winked. The gesture was small and quick and unmistakable, and the entire throne room seemed to hold its breath. The queen froze, and the starfire crackling but not releasing, and her expression shifting through confusion and shock, and then something else entirely. "And what did you, just your majesty?" and Maya said quietly, and her voice steady despite her terror. "And if you can read my thoughts about your daughter, and then surely you can read what I am thinking about you right now." The queen stared at Maya, and her mouth opening slightly, and the starfire dimming, and her perfect composure cracking, and color rose in her immortal cheeks, and a blush that seemed impossible on such a powerful being. Behind the queen and several courtiers looked faint, and Lyra covered her mouth and her shoulders shaking, and the guards looked at each other in complete bewilderment. "No one has ever," and the queen started, and her voice lacking its earlier power, "and you cannot, and I am." And she paused, and her eyes still locked on Maya. "And you think that I am, and that my armor would look better," and she stopped, and seeming unable to complete the thought. Maya kept her expression calm and respectful, and but let a small smile touch her lips. "And I think your eyes hold more beauty than any star I have ever seen, and I think you know exactly what I am thinking, and because you are still reading my mind, Queen." Celestia sat back down on her throne, and slowly and heavily, and like someone who had just been hit with something they did not see coming, and this is highly irregular. The throne room remained frozen in stunned silence, and Maya could hear her own heartbeat, and could feel sweat on her palms, but she kept her expression calm and waited to see if she would die, or if her gamble had worked. Queen Celestia stared at Maya, and her cosmic eyes unreadable, and the starfire around her fingers had completely faded, and she seemed smaller somehow, and less terrifying, and more real. And after a long moment, she spoke, and her voice quieter than before. "And you are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish human." Maya allowed herself a breath and a little of both, your majesty. "And that is what makes humans interesting. And we do not follow the rules that others expect, and we improvise, and we adapt, and we survive. And we appreciate beauty wherever we find it, and even if that beauty could destroy us with a thought." The queen lips twitched in almost a smile. And you dare to flirt with me, and after I threatened to unmake you, with respect, your majesty." And Maya replied, "And you were going to kill me anyway, and so I had nothing to lose, and humans have this saying, and go big or go home." And she paused, and though I would prefer to actually go home if possible, Lyra made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh, and several courtiers looked scandalized, and the guards seemed unsure whether to attack or applaud, and the queen just continued to stare at Maya, and like she was a puzzle that needed solving. "You claim your portal was an accident," and the queen said finally, and her tone thoughtful, but accidents of that magnitude do not simply happen, and the barriers between realms are strong, and only great power can tear them. And she tapped her fingers on the arm of her throne. "And unless what?" and Maya asked. "Unless something wanted you here." And the queen eyes narrowed, and the old magic sometimes has its own will and its own purposes, and it brings together what needs to be brought together. And she looked at Lyra, and then back at Maya, and how interesting. Maya felt confused, and "I do not understand." "You do not need to understand, and not yet." And the queen rose from her throne again, but this time her movement was graceful rather than threatening. "And I have decided you will not die today." Human relief flooded through Maya. "And thank you, your majesty." "Do not thank me yet." And the queen descended the steps from her throne and walking toward Maya. "And I said, you will not die. And I did not say you are free to leave, and you will remain here as my guest," and she emphasized the word in a way that suggested it meant prisoner. "And you will tell me about Earth and about humanity and about why your kind are so reckless and bold." "And if I refuse?" and Maya asked, and knowing it was dangerous but needing to know, "Then you will remain here anyway, but as a prisoner instead of a guest." And the queen stopped directly in front of Maya, and close enough that Maya could see the galaxies swirling in her eyes, and And I think you would prefer to be a guest, and she leaned in slightly and her voice dropping to almost a whisper. And I think you would prefer to keep thinking those interesting thoughts about me, Maya, face flushed, and you are reading my mind, right now. The queen smiled and truly smiled, and it transformed her face from distant and cold to breathtakingly beautiful, and of course I am. And you gave me permission when you challenged me, and when you winked at me. And she straightened, and stepping back, and Lyra will show you to quarters, and you will dine with us tonight, and we will talk more. Then Lyra moved forward, and still looking slightly dazed, and Mother, are you certain this is wise? The queen glanced at her daughter, and when have I ever been unwise, and this human is either a threat or an opportunity. And either way, I want her where I can observe her. And she looked back at Maya, and where she can observe me. It seems. The courtiers began whispering among themselves, and the guards relaxed slightly, and the tension in the room eased, and Maya realized she had just survived something that should have killed her, and humanity had won again through sheer audacity. Come, and Lyra said, and leading Maya toward a side exit, and before my mother changes her mind and decides to unmake you after all. They walked through more corridors, and these less grand than the throne room approach and more intimate, and Lyra was silent for a while, and then she glanced at Maya, and that was the most foolish and most brilliant thing I have ever seen. Maya smiled weakly, and I'm still not sure if it was brilliant or if I just got lucky. You got very lucky. And Lyra confirmed, and my mother has not blushed in 3,000 years, and she paused. And no one flirts with the cosmic queen, and certainly no mortal, and you must have a death wish. Or maybe I just recognize beauty when I see it. And Maya replied, and I meant what I said, and your mother is beautiful. Lyra stopped walking and studying Maya carefully, and you are serious, and you actually find her attractive. Maya met her gaze, and why would I lie? And yes, I think she is beautiful, and I think you are beautiful too, and I am not apologizing for noticing. Lyra shook her head, and a small smile playing on her lips, and humans are strange, and here we do not speak so openly of such things, and desire is private, and thoughts are kept hidden. Well, and Maya said, and humans believe honesty is important, and I was going to die anyway, so why not be honest? And she paused, and does it bother you that I think you are beautiful? Lyra considered this, and no. And it is just unusual, and most beings fear me, and or fear my mother, and or fear Sable. And you seem to fear nothing. I fear plenty. And Maya admitted, and I am terrified right now, and my hands are shaking, and see. And she held up her hand, and proving it. And but fear and admiration can exist together, and humans are complicated that way. They reached a door, and carved with silver. Vines, and Lyra opened it, and revealing a room that was large and comfortable and furnished with a bed that looked incredibly soft, and a balcony that overlooked impossible gardens. And this will be your room, and there are clothes in the wardrobe, and food will be brought, and rest, and tonight will be interesting. Maya entered the room, and turning to face Lyra, and thank you for helping me and for speaking for me to your mother. Lyra's expression softened, and you are welcome. And try not to cause any more scandals before dinner, and my mother is intrigued by you, but intrigue can turn to anger quickly, and be careful. I will try, and Maya promised, and though I cannot promise anything. Lyra laughed softly, and I am beginning to see why humans survive, and you adapt, and you take risks, and you turn every situation to your advantage, and it is remarkable. And she turned to leave, and then paused, and Maya, yes, my mother was right about one thing, and the old magic does not make mistakes. And if it brought you here, then there is a reason, and I look forward to discovering what that reason is. Before Maya could respond, Lyra was gone, and the door closing softly, and Maya was alone, in an impossible room, in an impossible palace, in an impossible realm. And she walked to the balcony and looked out at gardens where flowers sang and waterfalls flowed upward and dragons soared through skies lit by twin suns. She thought about Queen Celestia's eyes, and about the way she had blushed, and about the dangerous game Maya had just started playing, and she thought about home and about her mission, and about how she was going to get back. But mostly she thought about the queen words, and something wanted you here, and Maya did not believe in destiny. and humans made their own fate, but perhaps this time was different, and perhaps the universe had plans she could not yet see. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and a servant entered, and carrying clothes. "And these are for dinner tonight," and the servant said, and her eyes curious, "and Queen Celestia requests you wear them." Maya looked at the clothes, and they were beautiful and flowing fabric in deep blue and silver, and similar to what Lyra wore, but adapted for human proportions, and she touched the fabric, and it was softer than anything on earth. "Tell the queen I will wear them," and Maya said, and tell her I look forward to dinner." The servant bowed and left, and Maya was alone again, and she looked at the clothes and then back at the impossible view, and then she started laughing, and because this was insane, and this was dangerous, and this was the most human thing she had ever done, and walk into the unknown and charm the uncharmable and survive by being herself. Tonight, she would dine with a cosmic queen and her daughter, and tomorrow she would figure out how to get home, but right now she needed to rest, and to prepare, and to plan her next move. Because humans always had a next move. And that was what made them survivors, and Maya Rodriguez was not going to be the exception. Maya stood before the mirror in her room, and the strange glass showed not just her reflection, but seemed to show possibilities and versions of herself that might exist in other moments. And she focused on the real reflection, and adjusted the flowing blue and silver dress the queen had sent. It fit perfectly despite no one taking measurements, and the fabric moved like water, and caught the light in ways earth cloth never could, and Maya looked different in it, and less like a soldier and more like someone who belonged in this realm, and she was not sure how she felt about that. The door opened, and Lyra entered without knocking, and wearing a dress of white and gold that made her look even more ethereal than usual, and she stopped, and studying. "Maya, and you look acceptable, just acceptable?" and Maya asked with a slight smile. Lyra's eyes held amusement and fine, "and you look beautiful, and do not let it go to your head." And she walked closer, and reaching out to adjust the drape of Maya's dress. "And my mother chose well, and this color suits you. Why did she choose this?" and Maya asked, "and why these specific colors?" Lyra's hands stilled in blue for earth skies and silver for starlight, and she paused, "and these are her colors and the colors of her house, and by giving you these she claims you as under her protection, and also as belonging to her court." Maya felt something twist in her chest, "and I did not agree to belong to anyone." Lyra smiled sadly, "And you do not understand yet. And when the Cosmic Queen decides you are hers, and you become hers, and whether you agree or not," and she stepped back, "but do not worry, and it is not cruel ownership, and more like," and she paused, and searching for words, and more like, "you are precious to her now, and she will protect you and also keep you. That is still possession," and Maya said quietly, "Yes," and Lyra agreed, "but it is also safety. And no one in this realm will harm you now, and no one will dare." And she turned toward the door, and, "Come and dinner awaits, and try not to start any more scandals." They walked through corridors lit by floating lights and past windows that showed gardens and courtyards and impossible architecture. And other elves watched them pass, and their expressions, ranging from curiosity to disapproval, and Maya kept her head high and tried to look confident. The dining hall was smaller than the throne room, but no less impressive, and the ceiling showed stars that moved and changed, and a long table sat in the center and set with crystal and silver and food that smelled amazing. And Queen Celestia sat at the head of the table and wearing a simpler crown now, and a dress that flowed like liquid starlight. The queen eyes found Maya immediately, and traveled over her, and taking in the dress, and something flashed in her expression, and approval and possession, and something else Maya could not name. "You wear my colors well," and the queen said, and her voice softer than it had been in the throne room, and, "Come and sit." There were only 3 places set, and one at the head for the queen, and one on each side, and Lyra moved to the left, and leaving Maya the right, and directly across from the princess, and beside the queen, and Maya sat carefully and very aware of the cosmic power inches from her. Servants appeared, and pouring wine that shimmered with light, and serving food that looked beautiful and smelled wonderful. And Maya waited for the queen to start eating, and following her lead. "This is amber wine," and the queen said, and lifting her glass, "and it will not harm you, but it will make you feel what you truly feel, and it removes barriers, and I want you honest tonight." Maya Rodriguez Maya lifted her own glass, "and I have been nothing but honest, Your Majesty." We shall see. And the queen took a sip, and her eyes never leaving Maya's face. And tell me about Earth and about your people, and why you spread through the stars so quickly. Maya thought carefully, and humans are driven by curiosity and by the need to know what lies beyond, and we explore because we must, and because staying still feels like dying, and we have wars, and we have peace, and we make mistakes, and we learn, and we keep going forward. The queen listened, and her expression, thoughtful, and you are young as species, go and barely off your home world, and yet you act with the confidence of ancients. And why? Because we have no choice. And Maya replied, and the universe does not wait for us to be ready, and it does not care if we are young or old, and we adapt or we die. And humans have always chosen to adapt. Lyra spoke up, and they are survivors, mother. And I saw it in this one. And she fell into our realm, and faced dragons, and faced you, and chose boldness over fear. The queen's smile was slight but real, and yes, I noticed, and she looked at Maya. And you winked at me, and no one has ever dared such a thing. Maya felt the wine warming her and loosening her tongue. And with respect, your majesty, and you were going to kill me, and I was already dead, and so why not die doing something memorable? And did you think it would work? And the queen asked, and did you truly believe flirting with me would save your life? Honestly? And Maya admitted, and I had no idea, and I just knew. I wanted you to see me as a person and not just an intruder, and humans are good at making connections and at making others see us as individuals, and it is a survival skill. The queen leaned back in her chair and studying Maya with those impossible eyes. And what do you see when you look at me? Human Maya took another sip of wine and felt its magic working and removing her filters and making her speak truth. And I see power that could unmake worlds, and I see beauty that makes stars seem dim, and I see loneliness. The last word hung in the air, and Lyra looked surprised, and the queen expression went very still. Explain, and the queen demanded, and her voice soft but dangerous. Maya met her gaze, and you sit on a throne above all others, and you are worshipped and feared and obeyed, and but who talks to you as an equal, and who challenges you, and who sees past the power to the person underneath. And she paused, and I think you are lonely, and I think you have been lonely for a very long time. The silence stretched, and the servants had disappeared, and it was just the three of them, and the queen face was unreadable. And then slowly she smiled, and it was sad and beautiful and devastating. You are perceptive, and the queen said quietly, and foolish to speak it aloud, and but perceptive, and she raised her glass into humans, and who see too much and speak too freely, and who are either blessed or cursed with honesty. They drank, and Maya felt the wine working deeper, and felt her walls coming down, and Lyra watched them both with fascination and concern. Tell me, Maya Rodriguez, and the queen said, and what do you want from life, and what drives you? Maya thought about Earth, and about her ship, and about the stars, and I want to explore, and to see new things, and to matter. And she looked at the queen, and I want to be free. Freedom is an illusion, and the queen replied, and we are all bound by something, in duty or fate or love or fear, and what binds you? Curiosity. And Maya answered, and the need to know what comes next, and humans cannot resist a mystery, and cannot leave a question unanswered, and it makes us foolish sometimes, and but also makes us great. The queen leaned forward, and what do you think will come next for you? Maya felt bold from the wine and from the queen attention, and I think I will learn about this realm, and I think I will understand why I was brought here, and I think, and she paused, and meeting the queen eyes, and I think you and I will continue this dance we started. What dance? And the queen asked, and though her tone suggested she knew exactly what Maya meant. The one where I challenge you and you pretend to be annoyed, and the one where we both know you could destroy me but you choose not to, and the one where we figure out what this is between us. Lyra made a small sound, and mother, perhaps this conversation should be private. Nonsense. And the queen said, and her eyes still locked on Maya, and I want you to hear this, daughter, and I want you to understand what this human has done, and she has walked into my realm and charmed me and made me feel things I have not felt in millennia. And she has done it with nothing but honesty and boldness, and it is remarkable. Maya felt her heart racing, and your majesty, I Celestia. And the queen interrupted, and when we are at dinner, and when it is just us, and you will call me Celestia Maya. Breath caught, and that seems too familiar. Good, and Celestia replied, and let it be familiar. And let it be strange, and let it be whatever it becomes, and she stood, and walking around the table and stopping beside Maya's chair. And you asked what I want from you. Maya looked up at her, and I did not actually ask that. Then I am telling you anyway. And Celestia reached out and touched Maya's face gently, and her fingers cool and electric, and I want you to stay. And I want you to keep challenging me. And I want you to keep looking at me like I am not a goddess, and but a woman. I see both, and Maya said softly. Then you see more than most, and Celestia replied, and perhaps the old magic was right to bring you here. And she stepped back, and her expression shifting to something more controlled. And dinner is over. And Lyra will show you back to your room, and tomorrow you will begin learning our ways. Tomorrow. And Maya stood, and her legs slightly unsteady from the wine, and will you be teaching me? Celestia's smile was dangerous and beautiful, and perhaps, and we shall see and sleep well, Maya Rodriguez, and dream of Earth and of home and of whatever else occupies your thoughts. Maya knew she was being dismissed and followed Lyra from the room, but she glanced back once and found Celestia watching her, and something in the Queen expression made Maya certain that everything had just changed, and that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new possibilities and new dangers, and Maya could not wait to see what came next. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through windows that showed twin suns rising over impossible horizons, and for a moment she forgot where she was. And then memory crashed back, and the portal, and the dragons, and the Queen, and everything that had happened felt like a dream. But the silk sheets beneath her and the dress hanging nearby proved it was all real. A knock came at the door, and Lyra entered carrying what looked like training clothes and good. You are awake, and today you begin learning. And my mother has decreed you must understand our ways if you are to stay here. How long will I be staying? And Maya asked, and sitting up. Lyra's expression was unreadable, and that depends entirely on you and on my mother and on what the old magic intends. And she tossed the clothes onto the bed and dressed quickly, and we start with Sable. The dragon and Maya felt excitement mixed with nervousness. You cannot live here without understanding dragons. And Lyra explained, and they are not pets. And they are not servants, and they are companions and partners, and Sable has agreed to work with you, and which is unusual, and dragons rarely accept outsiders. Maya dressed quickly, and the training clothes fit perfectly, like everything else, and followed Lyra through the palace and out to a courtyard where Sable waited, and the massive midnight blue dragon sprawled in morning sunlight, and its scales gleaming like polished obsidian. The dragon opened one golden eye, and watching Maya approach, and it rumbled deep in its chest, and Maya felt the vibration through the ground. Sable says good morning, and Lyra translated and asks if you are ready to learn. Maya stepped closer, and her hand outstretched, and I am ready, and thank you for teaching me. Sable lowered its great head, and letting Maya touch the space between its eyes and its hide was warm, and hummed with power, and images flooded Maya's mind, and not words but feelings and concepts and understanding. She saw the world as Sable saw it, and felt the wind under dragon wings, and understood the ancient bond between dragon and elf, and saw herself through Sable eyes, and small but bright and burning with something the dragon found interesting. The connection broke, and Maya stumbled back, and breathing hard, and that was incredible. That was a dragon greeting, and Lyra said, and Sable has accepted you, and now the real work begins. For hours, Lyra taught Maya about dragons and about their nature and their needs and their place in this realm, and Sable demonstrated and showed Maya how to read dragon body language, and how to understand their sounds, and how to respect their boundaries. Maya learned that dragons were older than the elves and had been here first, and had allowed the elves to share their realm, and that the bond between dragon and rider was sacred and chosen by the dragon, and never forced. She learned that Sable had bonded with Lyra 300 years ago, and that they shared thoughts and feelings, and that losing one would devastate the other, and she learned that dragons valued courage and honesty above all else, and which explained why Sable had accepted Maya so quickly. By midday, Maya was exhausted and covered in dust and completely fascinated, and Sable seemed pleased with her progress and made sounds that Lyra said were approval. Enough for today, and Lyra announced, and you have done well. And Sable agrees. And you have the heart of a dragon rider. I am not a rider. And Maya pointed out, not yet, and Lyra replied with a mysterious smile, and but perhaps someday. They returned to the palace, and Maya was taken to bathing chambers where servants helped her wash away the dust, and the water was warm and smelled of flowers. And Maya felt her muscles relax, clean and dressed in fresh clothes. She was summoned to a garden where Celestia waited, and the queen sat on a bench beneath trees with silver leaves, and she gestured for Maya to sit beside her. "You spent the morning with dragons," and Celestia said, "and how did you find it?" "Amazing," and Maya replied honestly, "and Sable is incredible, and Lyra is an excellent teacher." The queen's smile was soft, and my daughter has always been gifted with teaching and with patience, and she glanced at Maya, and traits I lack sometimes. Maya felt bold, and I do not think you lack patience, and I think you have the patience of eons, and you just choose when to use it. Celestia laughed, and the sound like bells and like thunder and perceptive again. And she turned to face Maya more fully and tell me, "Maya Rodriguez, and do you miss Earth every moment?" And Maya admitted, but I also find this place beautiful, and your realm is like nothing I have ever seen. And if you could go home right now, and would you?" Maya hesitated, and that is not a fair question. "Because you fear the wrong answer will anger me." And Celestia asked, "Because I do not know the answer." And Maya said quietly, "And part of me wants home desperately, and wants familiar stars and familiar faces. But part of me," and she stopped and uncertain, "part of you wants to stay," and Celestia finished, "and part of you is curious about what could happen here, and about what we could become." Maya met her gaze, and yes. The queen reached out and took Maya hand, and her touch cool and electric, "And I will tell you something few know, and I can open a portal, and I can send you home right now, and the power that brought you here was mine." Maya stared, "And you brought me here, and why?" "Because I was lonely." And Celestia said simply, "And because I asked the old magic to bring me something interesting, and something that would challenge me, and something that would make me feel alive again." And she squeezed Maya's hand gently, and it brought me you." Maya felt her world tilt, and so this was never an accident. "No." And Celestia confirmed, and though I did not know what would come through, and I did not know it would be human, and I only knew I needed change. And she looked away, and across the garden, and I have ruled for 5,000 years, and I have seen civilizations rise and fall, and I have everything, and yet I have nothing that matters. "You have Lyra," and Maya said, "Yes, and my daughter is precious beyond measure, but she is not." And Celestia paused, "And she is not someone who sees me and truly sees me, and she loves me as a daughter loves a mother. But you?" And she looked back at Maya, "And you see Celestia and not just the queen, is there a difference?" And Maya asked, "There used to be." And the queen replied, "And long ago, before I took the throne and before I became what I am now, and there was just an elf woman who loved starlight and music and flight, and who dreamed of more than duty, and then duty consumed her, and I forgot what it felt like to be anything else until I winked at you." And Maya said with a small smile, "Until you reminded me that I could still feel surprised." And Celestia agreed, "And still feel challenged, and still feel seen." And she stood, and pulling Maya up with her, "And I am going to be honest with you, because you deserve that." Maya heart raced, "And what are you going to say?" "I want you to stay, and not as a prisoner, and not even as a guest, but as something more." And Celestia stepped closer, "And I want to know you, and I want you to know me, and I want to see what this becomes." And she reached up and touching Maya's face, and "I think you want that too." Maya breath caught, "And I barely know you." "Then learn." And Celestia said softly, "And stay. And learn about me, and about this realm, and about yourself, and when you truly want to go home, and when you are certain, and I will open the portal, and I will let you leave, and I promise this." "And if I stay?" And Maya asked, "And what happens then?" "Discover it together," and the queen replied, "And no promises and no certainties, and just two beings seeing what grows between them." And she smiled, and one cosmic queen, and one impossible human Maya, thought about Earth, and about duty, and about the mission she had been on. And then she thought about Celestia eyes, and about dragon flight, and about the mystery of why she was really here. And she thought about the way the queen blushed, and the way her touch felt electric, and the way she looked at Maya like she was something precious. "I will stay," and Maya said, "And for now, and I will stay and learn and see what happens." Celestia's smile was radiant, and "Thank you." And she leaned forward, and pressing her forehead gently against Maya. "And I cannot promise this will be easy." Maya laughed softly, And nothing about this has been easy so far, and why start now? They stood like that for a moment, and two beings from different worlds and different natures and touching and connecting and beginning something, neither fully understood. When they parted, Celestia looked younger somehow and lighter, and as though a burden had lifted and come, and I want to show you the Star Gardens, and I want to teach you about the old magic, and she paused, and I want to know everything about you. Maya took the offered hand, and together they walked deeper into the gardens, and somewhere above them, dragons soared, and Lyra watched from a window and smiling because she knew the old magic never made mistakes, and knew her mother had been right to call out to the universe. And Maya Rodriguez thought about the portal that had brought her here, and about the cosmic queen who had summoned change, and about how sometimes the greatest adventures began, not with plans but with impossible accidents that were not accidents at all. She was far from home and bound to a being of infinite power and learning to fly with dragons and falling for someone she should fear, and it was the most human thing she had ever done, because humans did not just survive, and they thrived and they loved and they dared, and they made impossible things possible through sheer audacity and heart, and Maya was just getting started.